The technique of creating babies with three parents is potentially useful and not unsafe, according to the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority. It means the government is more likely to approve the idea of allowing babies with genetic material from three parents to be born in the UK. It would allow women who have defective DNA in their mitochondria to use another woman's mitochondrial DNA alongside their own nuclear DNA, effectively producing a child with two mothers and one father. The issue will be debated by Parliament before clinical trials start. We're joined here in the studio by Professor Peter Brodie, who's on the HFEA panel, which looked at the evidence. He's Emeritus Professor of Obstetrics and Gynaecology at King's College London. And we're joined on the line by Fiona Bruce, Conservative MP, who's co-chairs the all-party pro-life group. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Professor Brodie, can you explain what this conclusion means, this idea that it's not unsafe? It's not quite saying, I suppose you can't say that it's safe.
Well, realistically, if you think about any new medical technology as it comes in, it can never be guaranteed to be 100% safe. You will only find that out once it is in use. Everything, if you think about all the assisted reproduction techniques, whether it's IVF or ICSI, they've all come in, and then the major safety things have been done following that. What is happening here is we're saying that from the evidence we've seen, there is nothing that suggests to us this is fundamentally unsafe, although there are some further experiments we want to see. It's along the pathway where we would say it is not unsafe, and then the next step would be this is probably safe enough for clinical use, considering what the alternative is, which these awful mitochondrial diseases, children dying, children being disabled, adults in fact getting these diseases and dying prematurely.
OK, so the view is, let's take the next step. Let's see where we go from here.
Correct. We've asked for specific experiments to be done. We say that will add to our decision about safety.
OK, Fiona Bruce, do you accept that idea of progressing further down this route?
What we're concerned about is that the panel is saying that this, they think, is not unsafe, but that is quite a different thing from saying that they think it is safe. And in fact, if you look in detail at their report, there are questions which were raised in 2011, again in 2013, and recommendation after recommendation in this report says that further tests, research, studies and analyses are needed before a certainty can be offered, which I think is sufficient for parents before this can be used on humans. The report itself says there will always be some risks and unknowns associated with the use of these techniques in humans until it is tried in practice. And my concern is that that means we are effectively experimenting on babies.
So I'm wondering if anything could ever satisfy you, given that that is the case.
Well, certainly this effectively crosses a line, because for the first time it is a suggestion that there would be the creation of a genetically altered human being. Now, one of our major concerns is that we would be the only country in the world legalising this. Virtually the whole international scientific community, as I understand it, opposes this. UNESCO, the World Health Organization, the US Food and Drug Agency has said there is not enough clinical data to suggest it is safe. It is prohibited by the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, and 60 countries in their legislation specifically prohibit it.
OK, Professor Peter Brodie.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that there has been no country or throughout the world that has done the kind of detailed study we've done over 3 years. We have gathered all the possible evidence we can, both published, unpublished, and still confidential. So there is nowhere else that has looked at it in that degree of detail. And when we're talking about altering the genes of the child, we are not actually altering the characteristics that are so dear to families. It's got dad's nose, or it's got mum's eyes, and so on.
But it will be a genetically altered human being?
It will be genetically altered in the same way, because what we're actually doing is simply moving the mitochondria, is what actually happens. We move the sperm and egg nucleus into a new bag containing the new mitochondria.
And the mitochondria is like a battery in the cell.
Yes, but more than that, it has DNA in it, and that is what is concerning people. But let me give you an example. Let's say you have somebody who has a bone marrow transplant, and they receive cells from another individual, which then circulate in their body with all their DNA and goes into the cells and reproduces and so on. They become a mosaic of somebody else's DNA. They're not a relative. Okay, there is no big genetic change that has occurred here. This is not a new parent. It's not three parents in all of this.
Fiona Bruce.
Well, our main concern also is that this is going to effectively open the door, because if this technique is legalised, then selection for other reasons could be pressed for. Ultimately, we're opening the door potentially to the risk of consumer-driven eugenics to designer babies, and that is a line which we believe cannot be crossed. And I think, too, it's very important that whilst we all have tremendous compassion for the parents of children carrying such diseases, even the report says that it cannot guarantee, this technique cannot guarantee that the disease will not be carried and potentially carried down generations.
Fiona
It
Bruce.
may offer great hope, but it could offer false hope because the risks as yet are unknown.
It's a subject we could continue discussing for an awfully long time, but we will leave it there. Fiona Bruce and Professor Peter Brodie, thank you both very much.